Hi, folks. Welcome to Thursday's edition of I Write Radio, videocast and podcast. Today, we're going to go, I think, first with Nicola Sturgeon's press conference, and then we're going to have a wee chat about Nigel, I Can Go Anywhere I Want, Farage, and I possibly am going to introduce the sun, not the sun in the sky, the sun you wipe your arse with.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
So, Jimmy, today's presser didn't impress you?
Nah, not really, mate. I thought it was a bit dull, if I'm honest. Nicola came across as a bit of a schoolmarm, scolding us for going on the bus or jumping in our cars at one point. I get that she's trying to damp down expectations because there's clearly no likelihood of much lightening the lockdown next week, but I wasn't that impressed, mate. I thought there's a major issue there, obviously, with people who get concessionary bus travel using buses, because those are the people that specifically they kind of want to stay inside. So why not tell them that they can't use their bus pass for the duration? But other than that,
Jimmy,
I just found it a bit.
Jimmy.
I know. Well, mate, as I say, it went up a sixth, which isn't a huge amount, but it kind of backed up the anecdotal stuff that there's more traffic on the roads and what have you. But I just found the whole thing a bit blasé today. Even the FUD's questions weren't so fuddy today. You know what I mean? Some of them actually almost made a point.
I think the removal of bus passes from our over 60s would create eruption. I don't think that's a good idea at all. Now, Stuart, you've booked a 5-minute slot for this particular piece, so we're just going to give you your heed.
I think Jimmy fell asleep. This was definitely the best performance by the First Minister so far. She just really, it was forensic. She really took them out one by one. And as far as the bus passes are concerned, there were more young people jumping in their cars. That was up 25%, not 1/6.
15.
Well, it was more than the bus people.
Hold it before you start jumping on your high horse about that. How do you ken it were young people jumping in their cars? There's no measure of who was jumping in their cars.
But you were definitely suggesting that the bus concessions was old people.
No, I was suggesting that either old or people who are in some way infirm, because they're the only people that get concessionary bus travel.
This is getting more incendiary by the second. We're going to need you to regulate this row today, Norrie.
No.
Norrie's got a bus pass. He's on your side.
as long as they didn't mess with my bus pass, I'm quite happy.
Quite happy. Well, let me just run through it. It won't take me long. She started off by announcing that she wouldn't be saying anything detailed about testing because she's got a major announcement tomorrow, which she'd already flagged up a week ago. So, and yet one or two of them they fell straight over. It was like falling in a pile of shite as soon as they asked a question about it. She also really very carefully blamed the private sector for a lot of the care home problems that the Scottish Government have been attacked on. She did say it is our job to top up the private sector. And she actually mentioned the private sector. Unlike in England, they won't dare mention the private sector. It's called dispersed care homes. Oh no, they don't admit it's been privatized. And apparently every private care home got a week's supply of PPE just in case they were running behind and hadn't asked for any.
Can I kind of point something out? I don't think they are getting it free gratis.
All right, maybe not free, but they didn't ask for it.
They got a week's supply.
That was
whether they needed it or not.
Whether they needed it or not.
Yeah.
Also, regardless of whether they were private or public sector, it was all 1,100 care homes in Scotland.
There you go. So they all got extras, just in case they were running behind. Oh no, they were taking no prisoners on questions about PPE to care homes today. Not just the First Minister, but also the Health Secretary. What is it? We were told very early on, question 4. Oh, she didn't give Jim. She called Jim Matthews. Jim Matthews again. And we know of Sky. We know he doesn't like being called Jim. He insists on being called James. He thinks he's more important than everybody else. So he got his arse scalped again. He got told, "Don't. I'm not giving you anything." He's told her, "It's tomorrow. I've already told you. I'm going to tell you all about testing tomorrow." So he got no answer. Peter McMahon. Now, he did a private interview with her. I don't know why I've got a horrible feeling that she fancies him, because ever since they started these press briefings, Peter McMahon's been in the top 3 of the first 3 offered a question. And didn't you notice 2 or 3 days ago she did an interview, a one-on-one interview, an exclusive. So
she's been doing them all week, mate. It's
With
just
who?
most of them have been done. Most of them have been done remotely.
Oh, well, she did it in the same room with Peter McMahon. Don't expect any change anyway, she said very early on, and this was flagging up the row from down south. Oh, Scotland won't be making any relaxing the lockdown, but England wants to. We'll pass over on community radio, but we'll give it a shout. I think it's a vital part of what's going on. I think she looked a bit tired. She did. She made a number of quotes which suggest that it's getting to her. This is tough. I feel it. She didn't say she was tired, but she said, please, as if she was asking for a little bit of slack. I'm the eternal optimist. No, it was a whole litany of she looked a bit tired. Did you not think so?
I don't know.
She gets her weekends off. She dials at Gene Freeman to do the weekend shift so that she can have the weekend off. So if she's a bit tired,
well, I'm much more concerned about how she was dressed. Now that Stuart's decided who she fancies and she's looking a bit tired, I wasn't happy about the shade of her suit today.
Okay.
What? Are we the Sun now?
Right now, she come up with another quote. Do the right thing. Remember that wonderful movie, Spike Lee? She managed to come out with that. That could turn up in the tabloids tomorrow. I always listen out for Tom Martin, the Geordie from the Express. God, do you think the Sun's bad? I mean, for the last 10 years, the Express has been SNP evil. Anyway, he asked about trains. Apparently, how many more people using trains? I don't think you'd notice in Scotland about that, would you? And as I say, you mentioned the happy virus, which will be all over the Sun tomorrow. She said, if we relax too soon, it'll be a very happy virus. Now, come on, if you can't use that as a headline in the Sun tomorrow, you need sacked.
Now that you've brought the Sun up, I'm going to show you their front page today.
I'll shut my eyes till it goes away.
Okay, here you go, boys. Can you see that all right?
I'm waiting.
No, I've got my eyes shut, mate, because I'm wee scouse.
There it is. There it is.
So the Sun front page today, mask advice confusion. Big picture, full page, face off. Sturgeon says cover up in shops and public transport, but scientific evidence weak.
Okay, I've got an answer to that.
Well, if you give me 1 second, if you look at the corner of my backdrop today, that the wee heads with the face masks on, that's a Spanish government info meme, which basically says if you wear a mask, it cuts down the chance of spreading the infection. Now, some Egypt that works for the Herald today said he's not wearing a mask, whatever. So essentially what he's saying is, I don't care who I infect because he could be asymptomatic and not know it. Tom Newton-Dunn, who is the political editor of The Sun, was accusing Sturgeon in a tweet the day after it was announced that they would recommend wearing masks when you had to be in close proximity proximity to other people. He decided this was a political move.
He's an asshole.
This was to undermine the Westminster government.
Come on, this is it's a dead cat.
Nori,
Look,
can I make it simple, guys? Can I make it simple?
I'm going to make it simple, but I'll wait for you, Jimmy.
If we all wander about naked and somebody pisses, we all get splashed with it. If we're wearing trousers, less of us get splashed with it. And if the clown that pissed his cell is wearing trousers, he's the only one that gets wet.
I think that's wonderful.
Well.
No, that's very good. But honestly, it's a dead cat because every major country across Europe has recommended or even made it mandatory to wear a mask, and that's the reason in England they won't wear a mask. They won't recommend a mask because they won't do anything that Europe says has to be done because they're English exceptionalists.
Can we please have a European directive on how to breathe in that case? Because that would be wonderful if the English all held their breath for a while.
No, it's quite obvious. If Europe says to do it, they won't do it.
No, I'm sorry, Stuart. It's not a dead cat. It does two things. It indicates, underlines, exaggerates English exceptionalism, which is your point.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a dead cat. That can be dangerous.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's not a dead cat in that form. And it's not a dead cat because it's another case of the press going after the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon in particular, when she does something that is totally benign. Nobody's getting arrested if they don't wear a mask.
And also, it's not going to harm anyone by wearing a mask. You aren't going to in any way make things worse for yourself. You may make things slightly better, you may not, but if there's any benefit whatsoever, what's wrong with it?
It's totally benign, as I say. And the press feel the need to turn it into something that it just isn't. I'm not sure why nobody thinks this is madness. It's like, right, Scotland shouldn't do anything different to the rest of the UK, unionist argument. But we should trial opening up lockdown in Shetland, unionist argument.
Aye, because an Englishman suggested it.
So, I mean, what's the difference here? Oh, it came out of a unionist's mouth is the only difference.
Nori, it's their usual bullshit. I mean, you can almost feel sorry for them. There is no opposition in Scotland. They've got Jackson Carlaw, who is a horse's butt, and as far as everybody's concerned, is liable to blag a painting if you take your eye off him for a couple of minutes. And you've got Tricky Dicky. Tricky Dicky sitting in his, I mean, seriously, some of the interviews he's given over the last week or so have been laughable.
Managed to avoid them.
I didn't want to cast aspersions on the man, but genuinely, I think he's about as smart as Donald Trump, and that really puts him in a pretty shitty place.
I think we need to tell the listeners that Jackson Carlaw it's not true. I'm telling you it's a lie, but there's been a suggestion that a lot of paintings, valuable paintings, went missing from his car business when he went bankrupt. They should have been sold off and the proceeds paid to his creditors. But that's not true.
Perish the thought that Jackson would manipulate things in that manner. Just while we're still in the presser, guys, one of the questions was asking about testing and was asking about asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic shedding. Now, Nicola avoided speaking about it because she's got a big set piece for tomorrow. But I went and had a quick butcher's, and the first mention anywhere of asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic shedding, anywhere on the planet that I can find, was the 2nd of April. And the first actual evidence quoted by the World Health Organization was the 15th. So acting a couple of weeks later, given that no doctors in the world were talking about it 3 weeks ago, it's not a bad thing.
Fair enough. I've only got one last thing to say on this presser, and it was actually quite an important one. It doesn't reflect well or badly on any one person at the moment, but it is an issue that has been brought up elsewhere. Home care packages. This has not been raised. It's not been above the parapet anywhere. but I read yesterday that a third of home care packages in Lothian and in Glasgow have been cancelled. In other words, I've got a neighbour below me who gets a home care package, and that matters to me because I mean he's bedridden, etc. Anyway, a third of these packages have been cancelled just because. Well, we don't know it's because of the coronavirus emergency, but it's awfully convenient. But why?
You pay an awful lot of attention, bud. I brought this up a couple of days ago.
Aye,
We're talking about it 2 days ago.
We were talking about it. I mean, the point about this is the reason for it has to be identified. And if it's the fact that carers are off sick, it becomes a real issue. If it
becomes a testing issue.
Yeah, and if it's a fact that the PPE isn't there, therefore they're not there, it becomes an issue. We need to know the reason it's happening.
Certainly the stuff that I've seen on the news, and it was BBC, so you always take it with a pinch of salt, but it wasn't even hinting, it actually came out and just blatantly said that our largest councils in particular were encouraging people to try and get help from their families because they were indicating to them that providing the care that they were used to.
I'm sorry, Jimmy, you're right. You did talk about that. I think my point was really that I'm trying to make was that Jean Freeman, the health minister, was quite clearly ready to answer the question when it came up. Mm-hmm. And she said that they were actually talking about what they might relax when they do start relaxing the lockdown, and she was talking about lunch clubs, and that's where people that are stuck at home, they might relieve an unpaid carer, might get a few hours off because they might get carried off. The person might go to a lunch club and things. So I thought that was quite relevant, and I'm sorry I forgot, Jimmy, you did bring it up.
Well, I see a thing on Peston last night as well, and they were talking about how they could relax things, and genuinely one of the things that could massively help an awful lot of people is reopening schools, because according to now this was in England, right enough, so we take these figures again with a pinch of salt, but according to the figures, if they open schools and nurseries, our figure would still stay below 1 because there's very little transmission between school kids and nursery age children.
Jimmy, if they open schools and there's one death of one child anywhere in this country due to coronavirus, that was probably...
It's still not a reason not to open them, given the fact that that would ease pressure on hundreds of thousands, nay, millions of parents who are trying to juggle homeschooling their kids, working from home. Mate, the mental health issues that people are going through could be alleviated hugely.
It's too emotive.
I would say I'm more with Jimmy.
I'm a breeder, mate, so I didn't care if a few of them drop off the perch, eh?
Yeah, I'm more with Jimmy on this one. I would suspect that could be one of the first things relaxed with the lockdown being relaxed.
It'll be interesting to see the evidence for Germany and Austria, because forget what Dominic Raab had to say about Germany going back into lockdown yesterday. That was purely political and was shot down in flames by the German health minister. They've seen a slight increase in cases and they're monitoring it very carefully. They've said that there won't be any more release of restrictions in Germany for another week, but they haven't gone into phase 2 like he was saying. Raab, the ass.
Well, to stay on the point about schools, they're going to have to be very sure that there is no is maybe too strong, that there is very little negative effect. I'm sorry, when it comes to kids,
they are.
That'll make care home problems look tiny, and it won't have to be a big problem. You get one school that gets into double figures with infections. Now, I'm sorry, that'll be one of the very last things.
Mate, the numbers of people infected under the age of 15 in Scotland are statistically negligible.
Well, I'm sorry, Jimmy. It's just, it's the politically, it's death if you get it wrong.
Well, I think it's
So
worth
it's all right.
saying. It's
It's
worth
all right
saying,
for-
Jimmy. Come on, hold on a minute. You've had your say on schools. There is a
Sorry, Dad.
well, you'd be like, no, it's worth. There is an alternative view on schools. The situation with schools was modelled, and it was based on flu. It wasn't based on the current virus and any evidence of what's going on. There's another worry in with kids. Some kids have died apparently because of not anaphylactic shock, but some kind of an overreaction of their immune system, and they've been quite worried about this. There's something like 20, there's possibly 20 in the UK, young children,
and about half of them had coronavirus. Jill, my wife's been a midwife for 40 years, more than 40 years, and she's seen one case of it in her whole time in the National Health Service. And she's worked with kids at one level or another all her days. So it's a very uncommon infection. It's known about, but it's very, very uncommon.
Sorry, Nora, you've got me confused. What do you mean?
Yeah, and the fact.
What, I'm lost.
The 20 kids you're talking about in London, I can't remember what it's called. It's got
all right,
a weird name.
Okay.
Kawasaki, is it? Kawasaki disease.
I don't know.
It's related to Kawasaki disease. It looks very similar in how it goes about its destroying of people's internals.
Yeah, and effectively, it's just a massive overreaction of your immune system, and it attacks itself, basically.
Well,
so Joel's seen one case in 45 years. So it's very rare for there to be 20 is a worrying sign.
Well, that's what. Don't forget, there was another report last week. This is another thing that's only come up because of monitoring what's going on. And it was in New York. They were finding there were quite a lot of young people dying of unexplained strokes. And then after they died, they discovered they'd had coronavirus.
I'd like to know if they were cocaine users.
I think it's just a bad batch, mate.
I think, well, if you'd actually, well, you might be right, but no, it apparently was the strokes were unusual. Normally you get a stroke in is it the artery or the vein?
The vein.
Okay, well, these
these
clots,
were arterial
these clots,
strokes.
yeah, they were turning up in the artery then.
Right, okay, we've done
Let's
that.
cheer up. Let's have something a bit cheerier, Nori.
Jimmy, I feel that you need to vent, so I'm just going to mention a name.
Just a wee rant at the racist. Yeah, I'm hoping that he gets a visit for the police, mate. Nigel went on walkabout yesterday and drove 100 miles to a beach in East Sussex to film a racist rant about illegal immigrants. Unfortunately for Nigel, the sea was up yesterday, so he didn't actually see any illegal immigrants or manage to catch any on film. But he did have a nice wee racist rant about it. And I'm wondering if he's that desperate for coverage that he thought that unessential journey was essential to get himself back in the press. Although a spokesman did point out for Nigel that he's also a journalist, so effectively Nigel Farage now classes himself as a key worker.
All right.
He might be a key, but he's never been a worker.
It's just a shame that there weren't a couple of immigrant boats coming in yesterday, because maybe they'd have dragged them into the sea and curled them under for about 5 minutes to see if he could actually breathe underwater.
So
walk on water? I think he believes he can walk on water.
Has there been mass Normandy-style landings of immigrants in the south of England or something?
That's what he's worried about, mate. He's worried that Priti Patel's not doing enough.
All right, okay.
Guys, can you give me a minute? My old man shout. Sorry.
Cheers.
Well, look, I've kept something here in reserve. I actually, I don't know, there was a Prime Minister's questions yesterday, which we haven't mentioned, and I thought that Ian Blackford did rather well. I've got the review of John Crace, the very interesting Guardian columnist. He's always got something interesting to say. And he described. Did you see it yesterday? Sorry.
Yeah, we mentioned it yesterday, actually.
We did, but with the one we didn't mention a lot about it. But I think John Crace described Dominic Raab as a country solicitor up against a forensic Queen's Counsel. He felt quite sorry for him.
I'm sorry, the most
Sorry, there's too many letters in John Crace's description there. He got the first four right.
The first thing I noticed was that Stammers, the superb lawyer, has a real problem with verbosity. He took the full half hour for his 6 questions.
I know, he went on and on. I'm not impressed by him. Not impressed. It doesn't cheer me up. Well, Ian Blackford got a shout though in John Crace's article. He seemed to think that Ian Blackford was impressive.
Well, Ian Blackford went on Brexit. That's what he went on. He what did he say? He tried to be smart, actually. He tried to link it to the self-isolation of the coronavirus by saying, does the government really think it needs to self-isolate the British economy by going for a no-deal Brexit?
Yeah, see, but things didn't much improve when SNP's Ian Blackford wondered why the Conservatives were so dead set on leaving the EU at the end of the year, at a time when the economy might have tanked completely. Even Raab could see it was a completely ludicrous idea, and his face crumpled.
Raab was Raab. I mean, these guys they're such a bunch of, I was going to say hoodlums, but they're not even hoodlums.
They're not even good at it.
You know, they're so mediocre on every level. They're PR spin merchant tosspots.
Again, Raab waited till the last question and then said, well, we're taking expert scientific advice. If Mr. Starmer thinks he knows better, perhaps he'll provide us with ideas. So he's waiting to engage until he knows that he's got no comeback, which makes him a coward and a pussy, in my opinion.
Was his parting shot, his actual last sentence, not something about, and we're all in this together as a union, or something to that effect?
There is a kind of, they do kind of come up with that quite a lot, I think, because, you know, there is this background of the four nations, and as you mentioned already, if they can say SNP bad, they will in all the major press.
I would like to see a situation where they get the coronavirus under control, and then they have an outbreak in Hull. And they can isolate Hull by shutting the Humber Bridge. Would they do it?
Yes. In a nutshell, yes.
And every single argument at that point about Scotland's border crumbles.
Well, see, I worry, Norrie. See what you said there about getting the virus under control. I have issues with, and again, I didn't necessarily want to go back at Nicola Sturgeon, but I will here. Our numbers aren't improving in the way that she suggested they would a couple of weeks ago. If we are truly through the peak, if the peak was truly the 8th in London and about the 12th in Scotland, as they have told us, then our death numbers should be getting better by now, and they're just not.
Jimmy, I mean, it's a problem that the journalists have. They hear her say what they want to hear said. They don't hear what she says. Every single day, she does the same thing. She warns that she can't be certain that this is the peak. Things are looking better. Today, she was more upbeat about it than I've heard her. This is the first time she sounded confident about a drop in figures. But even then, she said, we need to wait till we see a drop in the numbers of deaths.
Well, yeah. I think we're looking at numbers that I think Scotland was lulled into a false sense of security in some ways. I think our numbers, they look good because our neighbours are worse.
Aye,
but
well,
Scotland compared to all the other small countries round about us have done shit at this.
Well, the first thing is Scotland, please remember, is a region of the UK. It's not a country.
It is a question that would probably need
do.
to be seriously examined, given that health of all the major devolved issues departments has been virtually rolled back into not being devolved because of the crisis. How does that impact on the argument for independence?
I think I would put brackets around that, Stuart, because I do think that we'll find that they've dealt with it better. And I would argue that one of the reasons they've dealt with it better is because they're smaller. It actually isn't a criticism of the English NHS. The bigger the country, the more difficult this is to do on a countrywide scale. So Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, I think when we look back at this, I think you'll find that they did it slightly better because the logistics were just smaller.
Yeah, but Norrie, the ongoing argument over the years now, one of the arguments between the NHS in Scotland, the NHS in England, has been that the NHS in England has already been partly privatised. And the NHS in Scotland, this is not the case. So if that is true, that we should see a difference in the results over this emergency virus.
And I think we will. One of the mistakes I think the Scottish government has actually made is in the statistics. I think if they'd followed exactly the same statistical parameters as England, our numbers would look a lot better. Remember, Scotland includes in their care home deaths any death certificate that mentions coronavirus. England doesn't.
No.
They only include positive coronavirus tested.
Aye, but England
cadavers.
had to find a way to slowly introduce their population to the realisation of how many people were dying in care homes. So they've went part of the way to that. On Tuesday, was it, that they changed the recording?
They took a big jump yesterday.
I still have issues with that, Nor. I mean, how can they possibly say that their figures are up to date with death and include deaths in care homes when their deaths in care homes have been running 2 weeks behind from the start of this thing? They can't possibly have caught up. It's a nonsense. But the other thing I would say, Scotland has dealt with it better than in some ways. The fact that we have a central purchasing, the SSS, I forget the name of it now, but like the old Common Services Agency. Aye, we've got a central purchasing agency for the whole of the NHS. That doesn't exist in England. Each one of the trusts were going out there and trying to buy PPE. That's why it was such a disaster down there.
Well, Jimmy, you're right, because in Scotland you have a different structure. We've got health boards. They have independent trusts.
Aye, but we've also got, around these health boards, we have a central purchasing unit, the SSS. I forget what it actually is. But they go out there and buy all the kit and then distribute it to boards. And if there's a problem with the kit getting out there, it's the health board's own fault. But what we've also not had was the Health and Social Care Act 2012 that Nick Clegg helped the Tories bring in. Remember that top-down reorganisation that wasn't a top-down reorganisation at all? Mm-hmm.
It was Lansdowne that came up with it and Grayling that implemented it.
Aye, but it's been an utter disaster, and it's also, that's where they hived off a lot of social care and a lot of, brought in huge amounts of privatisation to their care homes that, whilst we have some up here, it's nothing like as bad as what they've got down there.
I think the story of the Tory party in the NHS has always been about moving responsibility for the NHS away from the Tory party, from the government. I mean, the law down there is that the health minister is not responsible anymore.
Yeah, that's it. They've got this beautiful narrative that Whitehall shouldn't be running healthcare. It should be done at a local level. And that basically lets them off the hook for a hell of a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, but also it makes it possible to privatise it bit by bit.
Yeah.
Well, what I found interesting is I haven't heard any wonderful achievements by Virgin Care or whatever they're called, or any of these private health firms. I don't hear them whacking in a couple of million for PPE to help out the NHS who are paying their wages.
Mm-hmm.
You
We
know,
didn't, mate. This is the only reason that private healthcare providers are involved in health is for profit. There's no way that they're going to make a gesture that cost their profits in any way, shape, or form.
to go back to the sort of difference in figures, if care homes in England are any less than 40% at the end of this, somebody's fiddling figures. Everywhere else has hit the 40% or more, including Germany, Spain, Italy, everywhere.
Well, just deaths.
Yeah. And it's not rocket science. As I said yesterday, once they work out the statistical anomalies, the 70, the average age of people in care homes being 75, obviously means there's going to be, once the infection gets into a care home, that is the group that dies. That's the target group.
Look, I'm interested. I'd be very interested to find out what percentage of care homes in Scotland are privately owned and what percentage of care homes in England are privately owned. Any idea?
Nah, I must have a wee butcher's hook for that. If there's, wait a minute.
I think 60-40 comes into my head, but I think what you'll find is that there's a bigger percentage are businesses. So the council homes are bigger. Okay.
So it's not just a question of the number of care homes; it's the number of beds in care homes.
Well, it's the number of buildings as well.
Well, we don't want to be counting buildings.
Well,
count the number of beds that are privatized.
Yeah, I mean, if that's one way to look at it.
Or rooms, whatever you call it.
You might well find that there are 60% of businesses are private, but only 40% of occupancy is, if you understand what I mean. I don't know the figures. It's something I'll have to have a look at. It'd be interesting to see.
It would indeed.
And as I say, huge problems because these big old houses are not ideal for running isolation during a pandemic.
Don't get me started.
And then you've got the mixed ones that have the little sort of one-bedroomed, self-contained flats where you've got a button if you need help and so on. So there's various different
sheltered housing complexes.
Well, that are attached though to care homes. There's one of them in Granton, I think. Is it Granton? It's a new build. I think it's an Edinburgh Council one.
I wouldn't want. I tell you what, I wouldn't want to say anything too definite about social care. As I believe that's the broad term that includes care homes, care at home, sheltered housing, supported care. I mean, from what I know, there's a whole variety of different types.
There's hundreds. I mean, as I say, my own personal experience, and it's something I would like to see maintained, is the difference, the different kinds of care you can get in the different kinds of situations.
Yeah, but I don't want. I don't see how we can easily compare.
No, it's difficult. Yeah. And there'll be people who have done a wonderful job and still had deaths, and there'll be people who have had no deaths because it didn't get into the building who do a crap job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way it is. Right. Anything cheerful, guys?
Oh, yes. I've got something to finish up with. The mayor of Prague is under a death threat by some Russian gangsters, apparently. No surprise there, let's be honest. But it struck me that we don't know how many children Boris Johnson's got, but the more children you've got, the bigger risk you have of having a child kidnapped and held for ransom.
Right, you're going to have to add them together because I'm totally confused. Why is the mayor of Prague being threatened by Russian gangsters?
Been threatened with being assassinated by Russian gangsters. Does it matter?
And what's that got to do with having your children kidnapped?
Well, if it can happen in Prague, it can happen in London.
Okay.
Do I have to make that clear?
Yeah. So what are you saying that? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you're a bit slow on the uptake today. Look, the IRA managed to bomb 10 Downing Street and that hotel in Brighton. They managed to get to the very top of the British government. Are you telling me that Russian gangsters can't get to the children of the Prime Minister if they want to?
Why would they want to? He gives them everything they bloody well want. He plays tennis with them for £250,000 a pop.
Well put there, Jimmy. I'm glad you made my point.
I'm sorry, I'm still confused.
Yeah, but if he doesn't do what they like, well, there you go. He's got on.
Well, he's nothing to worry about. Nobody knows who his other children are.
No, there's a good point.
Maybe, and there is a good solid reason not to let the press know anything about your family if you're in public life.
There you go. I thought it was pretty shocking that the mayor of Prague was all over world news. The mayor of Prague's been, he looked very, they were showing him on television and he had a very worried look. They got him worried. Perhaps it was just right.
Did they say why he's been targeted? I
didn't go into the details. Does it matter?
All right. So it's not because he forgot to wear a poppy or something, no?
Well, I have no idea what he did. Perhaps he revoked somebody's license. Who knows?
His 007 license, his license to kill. Okay, guys, thanks for that confusing ending. I've no doubt it'll come to me. Tomorrow's Friday. Friday Hat Day, so we remember when Fridays are Fridays. By the way, just in passing, Jean Freeman's on Question Time tonight. That might be worth it.
Oh, well, she's good.
Yeah.
I thought she had a good performance today.
Yeah, I think that might be worth a watch. So, thank you, Jimmy Hutton. Are you still awake, Jimmy? You looked like you were falling asleep there for a bit.
Just about, mate. I'm thinking of going and booking a trip to Prague as soon as I can work out whether I can get there by paddle boat.
Then he go for a pint with the president.
I know.
I'll avoid the mayor at all costs.
Come on, look, we all live in Edinburgh. Surely there must be somewhere we can actually go on holiday that nobody else is using at the moment.
Oh, you mean like a holiday and a busman's holiday?
Yeah, well, it must be good. We could go and spend a couple of nights in a posh hotel in the Royal Mile. It must be pretty cheap at the moment.
No, we can't because we're self-isolating, guys. Thank you, Stuart. I'm Norrie Stewart. Thanks for listening, folks. And we'll catch you tomorrow. I think, as I say, Funny Hat Day tomorrow. By all means, if you're listening or watching, feel free to wear a hat during the broadcast. Cheers for now, guys.